Okay. All right. We are now recording. All right. Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome to the first issue of our ranking series. With me, as you can see, the illustrious Jason Orr. He is the second half of Bloodscribe Creations. He's more of the silent type, which is why you don't see him in a lot of videos. But he is responsible for the script for Good Works, What It Takes, and those are the two, right?
Yeah, I mean that have been made.
Yeah. And then he has been very helpful in my writing of the Hellgate, and he also a little insight into what we are doing at Bloodscribe. Our first movie was actually supposed to be a movie called We Lived that Jason wrote, and we are expecting that to be a follow up to the Hellgate for the roaring success that it will be. So once that happens, so you guys will be able to see really what Jason can do as far as feature stuff. So anyway, Jason is not on social media. So he has escaped the void that stares into us all by not being on social media. So I have no links for you to follow him at. However, if you follow Bloodscribe Creations, you will see him from time to time interacting on stuff like this, and maybe some behind the scenes stuff for stuff that we're shooting. So anyway, Jason, is there anything you want to say? Anything I left off?
I mean, not really. I mean, I'm looking forward to this. I mean, like I said, I'm not on social media because I feel like, I don't need to get my opinion out there, and yet here I am doing a tier ranking of the Nightmare series. So I guess I feel like my opinion can be out there a little bit.
Well,
So
these are opinions that matter. These are the opinions
right, of
that
course,
need to be heard. Is where
for sure.
we find the quality of the Nightmare franchise. The Nightmare franchise stands. And here we go. So Jason and I watched all of the Nightmares again to
At least once.
refresh our memory.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, right.
So we watched these to refresh, and especially me. I just got done watching 6. we will we'll talk about those.
Can't wait
So
to get that one.
what I think we should do is we should go through each film and maybe talk about what we liked about the movie and then what we didn't like, and then based on that, that's where we kind of put it in the ranking. And then
Come together, agree,
yeah, and then
because we
maybe
have to decide on a tier, right? Together, we can't be like two
yes, we have to
opposite
we
ends.
have to agree. We cannot. Yeah, we if we disagree, we have to argue and figure out which one is going to relent. So, welcome to the 4-hour. Uh, no, I'm kidding.
20 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Well, and to be clear, with the rankings, I mean, maybe the rankings make sense to everybody. Some people do like a name for every ranking, but it's S tier, top, awesome, legendary, great, the best thing ever. A is the step below that. C or B is okay. C is not okay, and D should be erased from history.
Yeah,
I think is
avoided.
kind of how I feel about it.
Do not watch. It's also I think it would also be like a recommendation tier as well. Like S is absolutely recommend, D is absolutely do not recommend, and then everything everything in between.
Everything in between, we'll figure it out.
So
Sure.
let's kick it off with A Nightmare on Elm Street, the very first of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, the movie by Wes Craven that helped kick off the New Line Cinema studio. Really, what are we thinking?
House that Freddy built. I mean, for me, it's one of two on this list that are very clearly S tier. It's innovative. It creates a couple of iconic characters, obviously Freddy, but I also think Nancy is iconic in her own way. Opened the door imaginatively with how kills can be. It's not just there is some love for the Friday the 13th franchise in my heart, but like you just when it comes to creativity, Nightmare on Elm Street series is unmatched in that decade. So I think this was really, with the exception of the end, I think it's pretty much an ideal horror movie.
So you would say the thing that you don't like about it is the end. Like that would be the one thing that you don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of it's out there in history, right? That Wes Craven wanted a different ending, and Bob Shaye wanted another ending, and they kind of came up with that one, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and is simply there to open the door for a franchise, which I mean I'm appreciative for, but at the same time, that shot of her mother being pulled through the door is so stupid, and and it's just such a whimper of an ending after like that great scene in the bedroom. So I just
So endings can
yeah,
really make or break a movie. Is the ending bad enough to maybe drop it down to an A?
I don't think so because it's and this is maybe decades of watching it over and over again speaking, but uh, it's never been. It's like an ending that's like that didn't work, but it's not an ending that's like fuck you, I'm so mad. Like that's
It's
the
not like the
kind
ending
of
of The Mist.
well yes, or Drag Me to Hell.
Or
Those two terrible movies. I
I'll
hate
always
them.
bring up The Mist.
But yeah, no, that's it's exactly it's like the ending's like, oh, well, they could have done better. And that drags it down, I think, from being like, in the same conversation as some other horror movies that I would place above Nightmare on Elm Street. I think the ending does take away and maybe drop it down in if we did a like a wider tier of like a bunch of horror movies, but in context of the series, I think it's one of the best it has to offer. I don't think the ending takes away enough to drop it to A, and that's my opinion. I think it's an S tier.
I think I agree. I'm gonna drop it there. The thing that I didn't like about Nightmare on Elm Street is the ending, and then I felt watching it again, and I mean, God, I've seen this movie over 10 times now. It kind of slows down in the middle a little bit, and that would be the one thing that I was like, I wish it would have picked up a little bit more. But I don't think it's enough, like, because I kind of have to nitpick it. And I also tried to watch this. I also tried to watch these really with a more critical mind, other than a fangirl mind, which is what I usually go into these. Being my favorite franchise, I need to like rein it in and be like, okay, critically speaking, what would if this was any other movie, what would I think? And I would agree it was the ending, and then the middle of the middle of the film kind of slows down a little bit.
But I mean, the stuff they do on their budget. It's like it was like a $1 million budget, and then you still have icon like Tina's body and the body bag being dragged out. Like that is one of my favorite images in horror ever. Like
Yeah.
it is one of the most creepy images in horror ever, and it's like, I mean, that's just part of the movie. Like they did so much with so little, and you'll this will be a recurring theme, I think, through a lot of the franchise, and sort of what counts against it much later is that they do so much with so little, and that's what sets it apart.
Yeah, I agree, and that's ultimately why I like these movies so much is how creative that they get with all of the problems that they were faced, and how they, how they design the kills, how they design the production, really, which is actually a compliment I'm going to give one of the movies that I don't know if you're going to expect, but we will see. So, all right, so Nightmare on Elm Street, S tier, we're going to agree.
Yeah.
Nightmare 2, Freddy's Revenge.
This is probably we'll diverge a little bit. I had Nightmare on Elm Street, and I had Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on VHS growing up. I watched them a lot. I obviously don't think that 2 holds a candle to 1. I don't even think it's A tier, but I do think it's B tier. I think there are things about it that don't work or are a bit ridiculous. And watching Scream Queen, Nightmare on Elm Street, which is definite recommend. It's a really great documentary about kind of goings on behind the scenes. But like the things that I always take away from 2 is one, I think it's the scariest version of Freddy, which is saying that's fairly important in a horror franchise. I think Freddy has never been scarier than he is in 2 in terms of his makeup and the lighting on him and how he's acting, and it's just so. And it's part of the production value too. Like it's so sweaty and everything's melting, and it just has this atmosphere to it that's really brutal. There are a lot of things that I don't like about it too. Freddy running amok at a pool party is pretty dumb. You don't need 5'7" Robert Englund running around with a bunch of 6.5 foot tall teenagers. It just doesn't work. Um, and obviously the unconvincing love story, although I think it's fairly decently acted. That's kind of all these things. It's like, yeah, there are things about it are really strange. There are things about it that really don't work, but there are also things about it that are like that really set it apart from the like every other film in the franchise. And so that's why I kind of solidly I put it at a B tier simply because I think there's enough to it that I would say, and I would recommend any movie B and above tier is kind of how I look at this. I would say you should check this out. And I would recommend this to somebody on the off chance that they might dig it for the same reasons I do.
Yeah, so I guess I'm hovering between B and C too. I kind of want to put it at C just because I think that I agree with you. I think it's probably the scariest Freddy is, with a couple of exceptions. He's definitely, the way that they shoot him is a lot darker. He's definitely not lit well every time he does show up. And then the dream sequences themselves are pretty scary, but they're also I can't remember one other than the ones that are like the bathroom and the pool party, the dumb ones. That's what I keep thinking of when I think of this movie, and it's like, if I recommended A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, and somebody was like, I want more, I think I would just go to 3. Like, I really don't think that I would like that. I
agree with you. I think this is more like a deep dive. Like, you've watched a number of others in the series and you just want more of the franchise. I agree with you that there are very limited dream sequences. Like, the one I think of is when, everything's sweaty and melting and Freddy does that like thing with his brain where he's pulling the skin off. It looks super gnarly. But this movie, now that you mention it, really doesn't have those inventive dream sequences. But I think that's because this is less of a fantasy horror dreamscape film like pretty much the rest of the series. And it's more of a possession movie. And so a lot of the horror is happening outside of dreams. Like, it's because Freddy's moving through the kid and like coming out of him and like attacking people in real life. So like they really broke from, and the second film, they really broke from what like made the first movie work. Again, this is such a complicated, I understand pretty much almost every opinion on this movie. But I still kind of like it for all those weird things. But yeah, I agree. The dream sequences are really not much to speak of, but I think that's because they decided, you know what? This dream killer, we're going to have him just possess this guy and act out in the real world for some reason. And
right, which is why I just don't think it works, is because it very much separates itself from the rest of the franchise in that regard. Freddy attacks you in your dreams. He doesn't attack you in real life. We find out later on, okay, if you have a special power, you can pull him out and kill him. But like, that's going to be some of the critiques of the other movies. Like, the Freddy lore is so fucked up beyond one, and so like that's going to be a lot of my complaints about a lot of these subsequent films, is that they either fuck with the lore or they completely change it, or they just ignore it altogether. And that's like that it's a franchise that ignores or breaks its own rules a lot.
But I mean, they're already doing it with the second film, so I understand the film to film, and I'll bring up points that bother me too. But a lot of the minor stuff, the stuff that's like, hey, that doesn't fit, or that doesn't make sense based on what they just said last film, I'm not gonna sweat too much, because the movie, like every film, again, starting with the second one, they don't do a great job of, like, different writers, different directors, different opinions on how it should work. There's no through line in terms of like having concrete lore. And since the series as a whole just has vaguely outlined lore that it sometimes breaks when convenient, I understand harping on it, but unless it's like a major thing that like derails the movie, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, I just kind of accept it to a degree.
I think it does derail some of the movies, though, because you're just watching some of the movies, and like I said, we'll get into it, and you're just like, I don't know what I'm watching. Like, this doesn't feel like Freddy. And yeah, nobody went into the Nightmare on Elm Street movie thinking that it was going to be a franchise. Like, nobody thought that. But, they were so popular, they were like, well, we might as well keep making more. And nobody thought maybe we should stick to, some kind of a through line through all these, just as far as like just
It's the Wild
Freddy's
Wild West,
history
man.
alone.
80s.
Let's just agree on that. You know, you can't do it.
The 80s. I mean, here. Bottom line for two. Again, I think there are enough good things, there are enough bad things that it is a super mixed bag, and sometimes, you know this just like I do. You can enjoy something that's not super good. You can enjoy it
Yeah,
for certain
well,
reasons. So that's why I'm okay putting it C, even though I think it's a B, because I sympathize with the issues that you have. They are issues for me. They're just I don't weight them as heavily in this case.
all right, so we'll leave it at C.
Yeah.
Okay. Nightmare 3, easiest S tier of my life.
Are you kidding me? No, I mean, duh. There's only spoiler alert. There's only two movies that I think are S tier, and right now they're both in S tier.
Yeah.
Nightmare 3 was such a great, like, it's just it's corny as hell. It's ridiculous. Like they don't even do Freddy's voice modulation consistently, which is I just rewatched this recently again, obviously in preparation for this. Like there are some things you can poke holes at, but like overall the inventiveness, the fantasy horror that you want from the series is exemplified here. Uh, the idea of having these special powers in your dreams, so like all the kids aren't just helpless running around scared, and the windows of creativity that opens up, so it's not just Freddy fucking with stuff, it's the kids fucking with stuff. I really like that. Plus, Dokken. I mean, I really don't have a lot negative about this. And you have Nancy return in a great sort of like in a great way that makes a lot of sense. Um, slightly corny ending, but I mean, there's just nitpicks. There's just so much right about this movie, and I think it's one of those things. It's almost like Alien and Aliens. Like, which do you prefer? If somebody told me they liked the first Nightmare better, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. And if somebody was like, I like 3 better, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. And if they told me 5, I'd be like, you're crazy. So
Yeah.
it's. I know I could talk for a long time about Nightmare 3, but I think you and I are vibing on the same wavelength in terms of all the stuff that it does right. It's just a really fun horror movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I recommend 3 all the time. I recommend if nobody's ever seen Nightmare on Elm Street, I said go watch 1 and then just go watch 3 because I think they blend very well together. They're the only 2 that actually acknowledge. Well, the third one is the only one that acknowledges the first one that has to, and and sticks. Well,
Two mentions the crazy girl who used to live in this house and her diary, and it was Nancy that he was. So that family moved in. I mean, it's there. I'm just saying it's there.
Okay,
There was some acknowledgement in 2. It's just
but
almost pointless.
3 could have been 2, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, two is not recommended viewing for between 1 and 3, not at all.
Yeah. So and that's why I like 3 so much, because it sticks to the Freddy is a dream demon. He's a nightmare creature, and I really do love what you just said was the juxtaposition between the kids' powers and Freddy's powers and what all can be done in the dream world while you're dreaming. The whole group therapy to induce a group psychosis in order to enter the dream world, I think is great. I think Nancy's story is great. Yeah, I mean, it's S all the way.
I mean, and then you have this sort of urgency in the setup. It's like, oh, these are the last Elm Street kids, and that obviously comes up in later films as oh, he was really just targeting Elm Street kids, like very specifically these scions of the people who went after him. And so there's like urgency, like these are the only kids left. And I think another thing that really speaks to why this is such a good 80s era slasher horror movie is you actually care. I mean, I do. I don't know. I care when when kids die in the movie, because they don't have a lot of like a lot going on, but they give you enough, and the actors who portray them are likable enough that you don't want to see them go. Like Justice for Taryn. Like I that upsets me so much. Taryn is so badass that her mohawk is so and then she just gets like, and she kind of had him on the ropes. Like I get real upset every time I watch it. I'm like, I showed my daughter and she was like in that moment, like, man, that really pissed me off just now. And it's just like, always feel that in a horror movie, especially in that era where a lot of characters are sort of throwaway and just around to see how creatively they get killed. And in this case, you get both. You're kind of looking for how creatively they get off, but also you're like, no. So I could keep going, but
no, yeah, I mean, and that's a testament to the writing, and that's what you want. That's what you want out of a story like that. Is you want characters that you can relate to. Horror should not be excused from good writing just because it's horror. And I think more, we're getting more and more that actually have character stories to tell. But I think Nightmare 3 is a great one to show, like, yes, look, here's this 80s slasher movie that actually has like well developed characters that you care about, and when they die, you're like, fuck, that sucks. So all right. So I think, any final thoughts on Nightmare 3?
Nope.
Okay, watch Nightmare 3. Alrighty, Nightmare 4. I will go first this time.
Sure.
I really want to put this in A. The reason why is because I think the creativity is also there when it comes to the kills. The suck face scene, I think, is great. I wish it. The only complaint I had about that was I wish that she actually looked like that in the real world. Going back on, like, what happens to you in the dream world is what happens to you in the real world. So, like, that's my complaints about this movie, is that they don't show that. But I like, what's her name? When she's working out and Freddy, like, turns her into a bug and stuff like that. Like, I thought that was really cool. And I didn't like the actor switch, but I mean, whatever. You're gonna get that. But I thought that the movie was actually pretty well acted with those characters, and I didn't think that the ending sucked. So what do you think?
So for me, it's a B tier, and it's a B tier because of the story, and because sort of in terms of like breaking rules. The dog peeing fire. I mean, every time we talk with anybody about this who has an opinion, that comes up, and I'm like, yes, the dog pees fire. It's stupid. It makes no sense. Kincaid going, like, it just doesn't make sense, and it's not enough to go like, yeah, I get why Freddy's back now. And it's just like they were like spitballing right before, and like, what can we do to bring Freddy back? And they picked the dumbest thing that could happen, or like the most unlikely dumbest thing, and that's what they chose. The high marks for 4 are, and yeah, the recasting sucks. What are you gonna do? She was fine. The big problems I have with 4, I'll start with the big problems first and then give it some compliments. The big problems are unceremoniously killing off the survivors of 3, who we just talked about liking as developed characters. Like, they all die in the first like 15 minutes in really stupid ways. I mean, Kincaid's is pretty stupid.
Kincaid's really stupid.
The waterbed's fine. Freddy just going ha and throwing Kirsten in the boiler sucks because she was like the main character. Like, they just like, oh, we gotta kill these kids off so we get to the new kids. I hated that about it. And even like, yeah, the cockroach. I mean, the cockroach is disgusting. The pizza is disgusting. Sucking face is disgusting, and I say all that as a compliment. I think they're really disturbing, stick with you, make you shudder when you think of it imagery, which is a calling card in the series, or at least it should be. It's what the movie should strive for when you're dealing with Freddy Krueger, who can control reality. But at the same time, like, after those characters that we love from 3 are just sort of like, oh, now they're all dead. Now we're dealing with these characters. Like, I like Alice. But the other characters were kind of one note to me. It's like, here's the tough girl who hates bugs, and here's the dorky girl, and here's this guy who likes karate, I guess, and we're gonna kill him with an invisible Freddy, which is really stupid. Also, like, they couldn't afford Robert Englund for one more day, and so they would be like, there are definite pitfalls. And yes, I do think I think ultimately Alice evolves into an interesting character. I think her going out and her being developed as this sort of anti-Freddy is sort of an interesting idea that's developed in this. Freddy being ripped apart is a very cool image.
That's probably the best looking
the best looking, but now all of a sudden mirrors. Like there wasn't a scene in 3 where they're all in a room full of mirrors that Freddy's in. Like it's like bookended with really stupid things. Like it's bookended with dog pee peeing fire to awaken him, and then all of a sudden the mirrors that he was playing with in the last movie are like, oh no, he saw himself. Oh god, like now he's dead. I guess it's just it was out of nowhere. Like we need to end the movie, and I think those are big enough. And I talked about like little things not bothering me so much. These things, killing the characters from 3, resurrecting Freddy in a stupid way, killing him in a really visually interesting way, but in a nonsense way also. It just takes it, and then having like the invisible kung fu death. I mean, there's just it. All that doesn't work for me. So like, I think this is probably. Go ahead.
Well, so to counterbalance that, what about? Because something that we've been complimenting the movies on is their creativity and their production design and everything. What about Soul Pizza and like?
Well, I mentioned the pizza.
Soul Chest
I mentioned the pizza.
like,
I mentioned. Yeah. Like I said, all that is disturbing imagery. That what 4 has going for it is the creativity of the kills and the disturbing imagery, but it does not have story. And in terms of story, like the story's kind of thin. Kill all the old characters, have this anti-Freddy, which is I like that idea, and kill off all of her friends and have her go on this journey. That's fine. But like I didn't get attached to these other characters. I was more interested in the interesting ways I guess they were being killed, and that sort of is the distinction between 3 and 4 for me.
Yeah.
And so when it's like I can point to and the misses for 4 are big misses. The pluses are big pluses. The misses are big misses. That's why it's solidly B for me.
All right, we'll put it at B.
Excellent.
All right.
Compromise.
All right, so we'll do that. Okay, so Nightmare 5, S.
So now, this yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I really want to put this in D. Like this movie is so dumb. It almost feels intentional. Like it.
Well, I mean, did you watch Never Sleep Again, the amazing documentary?
Yeah, once. Okay. And I think I was high.
One thing that I always remember about 5, and will come into play when I'm talking about what I think worked and didn't, is that it was basically being written as it was being shot. Because I do
remember that.
Because it had here's the date it's being released, you better get it done by then, and it was like less than a year after 4 came out. Like it was something really stupid, and so it's very noticeable that they're like and you're just like writing whatever, so yes, I agree, and there's a reason is that they were literally writing it as they went along, and there was no great forethought into where things were going, or does this dialogue even make sense?
Yeah, does this scene after make sense with the scene that just happened? Like that question was also never asked. So what are some good things that you like about 5? Anything?
Okay, 5 is the one I watched the most recently because it's not the worst in my opinion, but it's clearly not the best or even quite middling. So I love the opening credits. I think that's a really interesting shot. I think it's directed with very interesting imagery, and I think there were a lot of good ideas here in the like the concept of Freddy can't beat Alice, and so like he tries to figure out another angle to attack her from, and so it's this unborn baby, which I don't know if unborn babies dream 70% of the time, or if they just made that up. They probably just made that up for the movie. It sounds made up, which again, knowing about the history of how the movie was written, they were like, does 70 sound high enough? Like that's probably what they did. But it's still an interesting angle. Like I can't get at your friends through you, so I'm going to get at your friends through that. Like it's an interesting angle to take, I guess. And very unconventional and something I would never have thought of, to make a sequel. So like I kind of appreciate it for that effort. I also think Dan's death was really fucking cool. All right, that was on the motorcycle.
Yes.
That was it's and the other thing about the deaths, like Dan's is like brutal and like, you know, like Tetsuo the Iron Man, like disgusting and like super cool. And then the other deaths, there's two. there's I think there's what, three whole deaths in this movie.
Yeah.
And one is like somebody cutting up a paper mache guy, which the set's really cool. Like they did everything in black and white, you know, and they were aping on these black and white comics that he was writing. Like conceptually, good idea. Freddy ultimately like turning into Super Freddy and then like just going and cutting paper up as a death is dumb. I mean, it sounds like fitting, but it's dumb. And then Greta's death being stuffed to death. 5 is also notoriously it's known for being cut. A lot of the violent, like the death stuff being cut because the MPAA was like had a super raging boner for messing up Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street movies because of the reputation. So like we're watching Greta's death, like he's supposed to be like scooping her stomach out and feeding it to her. And you can kind of get that implication, but like they cut out so much of it, her death is like 15 seconds long.
Yeah.
It's so like there's a lack of kills, and then the dialogue.
Yeah.
The writing is so. I wrote one down for this video that I laughed so loud when it happened. They say she hung herself, but her body was never found. Like they reported in the paper that someone hung themselves, but they couldn't find the body.
So what? They found a noose? Like
they found a noose and were like, well, she probably used that, I guess, and then took herself down. And like when they talk about Amanda Kruger, I'm just like, and that was just my sterling example of the writing. You know, like the grandparents going, well, you should just give us your baby because we have like an equal claim to it because we're the grandparent. Like what? I mean, I guess it's 1989, but no, that doesn't make any sense. Like there were so many things like, but then they did some interesting things like with her dad being like a recovering alcoholic. Like
he got
kind of
his
a piece
arc.
Of shit.
Yeah, he got his
arc.
Yeah,
that was cool. I actually liked Alice in this even better than in 4. She was doing a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to trying to keep the threads of the movie together. And I just think it's funny that she made all these friends and like never told them about this dream demon guy that killed those people in the same school they went to a year ago.
Right.
So, and her best friend's like, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Yeah. And all this stuff is like, no, it didn't happen. No. And it just, I mean, I guess it's not the first thing you want to bring up when making friends in high school, but I still feel like that. I mean, and her one friend believed her, so that was cool. I mean, I guess there was some contrast there, but like I said, I for me, it's for me it was C tier, so just above the bottom. Not only because the things that I put in D tier are so much worse than I think this was, but I think that there were enough interesting elements and standout things that I could watch this again and not hate myself. When the other movies that I would put in D tier is not the case.
Yeah, I think you're right because thinking about the kills, they are very good. They are creative. They are well done, despite the terrible writing, the terrible acting, and just the lack of any story and or coherence really with any of the with the universe that the movie is taking place in. I guess I would recommend this to somebody like, look, if you want to know how to like shoot some cool, like a motorcycle death and getting your own stomach.
I think it's directed well.
Yeah, like
I think it's directed well. Yeah, I think it's directed well. I'm not saying it's like Scorsese. I'm saying like it's directed competently and stylistically. That's one of the reasons I like the opening credits. I think they're super stylistic and interesting. And I think a lot of the things in the movie are shot that way. Like, you know, the sort of the matte painting of the hospital, you know, there's a lot of good atmosphere in the movie. It's just not supported by writing of any kind.
Yeah.
So, and Freddy's makeup looks pretty bad in this too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll put 5 at C.
Okay.
Next.
What
Nightmare
can be
6.
said about this that I actually want to say? The last time I watched Freddy's Dead was, I think it was like 2012, 2013. And it's been so long because I stood up. And I mean, I was like this, I don't know, the 10th time I watched. I've been watching these since very young. Um, and obviously how bad they were didn't really, like, certain ones didn't really sink in. Although I believe the first time I watched 6, I was like, no. I just, that no didn't become so loud until the last time I watched it about 10 years ago, when I stood up and I was like, I'm never subjecting myself to that again. That is some goofy, campy bullshit that does not belong in the
They
Nightmare series.
they turned Freddy into a comedian. Like,
Not an unfunny
and
one.
an unfunny
Yes.
one. Yeah, it's like the amount of quips and like one-liners that they're trying to force feed. Like he says 3 one-liners in a row. Like he just line, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, but by the time you cringe at the first one, you don't have time to cringe at the second one. It's just an onslaught of just terrible one-liners that they give him, and they like make him fun in the video game scene.
His power glove.
Like what the fuck? Like
The director was Rachel Talalay, and she was like a producer on like all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies up until that one. So like she was involved with every single one. So you're like, okay, well she really has a handle on the series. I don't think she did. Like because she turned him into, like, the tone was so wrong for the series, especially since it was, touted as this is the final Nightmare. This is the last
right.
Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Freddy's gonna die. They call it Freddy's Dead, which I also think was a really stupid marketing idea to call it Freddy's Dead when you actually do kill him. I think that's just dumb.
And like
Uh,
how many times has he died?
no, he's for real dead
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
blew him up with a stick of dynamite. The most creative of kills. There's two things that I remember this movie for, other than all the stuff that I blocked out so that I don't slip into insanity, which is the map part. Always, when I think of it, always makes me laugh in a good way, unlike the whole rest of the movie. When they're like, what does the map say? And he opens the map and it says, you're fucked. And he says, the map says we're fucked. Like, it's hilarious. I'm sorry. Every time it cracks me up. And it's just so out of place in the whole rest of the movie. It's the only thing that lands. But I guess if you throw enough at a wall, right? And then honestly, the scene with the kid with the hearing aid.
Oh yeah. The
Is
giant
like
ass. Yeah, that hurts.
With him, that hurts to watch. Like, and it is a kill that makes you uncomfortable because of the sound design, the sensitivity of ears in general, where you're just like, you don't want anything to touch them.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty effective as a concept. I still don't like the things that Freddy's saying, but the imagery, like him, like, dropping the water and the needles and all that stuff, and it being super loud, like that is the only kill in this whole movie that I'm like, okay, you could put this on a list of like the best kills because of how it's set up. I think
it starts off that way, it doesn't end that way. It gets progressively sillier. Like when he pulls out the blackboard and he's like a clown doing a magic trick, like, oh, it's getting longer. Oh, it's getting taller. Well, I got my claws. I'm gonna scratch it now. And you're like, oh my god, like this. Why?
Yeah, it's but it is the absolute worst. It doesn't make any sense. The fact that, and talking about the mythology, like, I like that Alice is this anti-Freddy figure, which, the universe should have some balance. Freddy just being able to run roughshod all over kids for no great cosmic reason feels a little irritating. So they have like, oh, let's have this kind of counterbalance in the universe with Alice. Okay.
6 explains the reason why he can do it.
Well, she left, right? Like, she just left town.
Yes. I mean, like, how he gets his powers.
Well, no. The explanation for his powers in the standout 3D sequence, whatever. I don't care about the the origin of Freddy, which they show in this. It's whatever. I don't care about that. Although it does relate to one of the characters.
Well, one of the origins of Freddy. I mean, his origin has changed 3 times throughout this series so far. So,
but the fact that they have Alice, this character, they build her up in 4, they establish her in 4, they show that he can't beat her in 5, and so they're like, well, what do we do about this? Let's just have her leave. And so she just leaves town. And then there's this arbitrary, then apparently because she left, even though the mythology to this point is that he can only go after either Elm Street kids or kids that were connected to Elm Street kids, which would make it only Alice. And since he couldn't go through that door, but she leaves, and all of a sudden he can just kill everyone in Springfield. Or Springwood, sorry.
Yeah, like somehow she was a gate.
Yeah, and now he can't leave Springwood. So now he has this elaborate plan to leave Springwood by becoming Bugs Bunny or something. I don't know. I will never watch this again. Like, not even to show somebody like, haha, this is terrible, because it's a violently unfun time. And that's why, as much as I have problems with 5, I don't hate myself watching it. 6, I hate myself watching it. And that's...
All right, so I think we're in agreement. 6 belongs at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
If you like 6, please leave a comment in the video and tell us why.
You know, there's somebody out there. This is my favorite.
I would legitimately love to hear it, because I'll also bring it up on the next on whatever the following Hookah and Horror is. I will bring that up, and I'll be like, I found someone who likes 6. Here's what they say. Let's talk about it.
Listen, I've been on Reddit just lurking. I'm sure there's somebody who loves 6 and thinks it's the best one. Like, 1 and 3 are stupid, but 6 is the best, followed by the remake. Anyway, I get ahead of myself.
Yeah, if you want to find garbage opinions, Reddit.com. Especially horror. The horror subreddit is fucking garbage, and I hope you're all listening. Anyway, so let's move on.
Well,
nope, not this one. We're out of order. New Nightmare. What a relief.
From 6. And for me this is the only A tier on my list. And I probably like it more than other people, but I think it is as wildly inventive as the first one was, in terms of being sort of, I think of it as like a proto Scream. Like, it is meta horror, right? It's meta horror, but it's not satire. So like a lot of meta horror before was aware of itself, like, oh, it knows it's a horror movie, but in the effort to make jokes. Whereas this knows it's a horror movie. It's just this movie within a movie, and conceptually, like, I like this, like, I write stories to contain this great being of evil, and there are things about the ending that don't work, and there's not much in the way of kills, but like conceptually, and having Heather Langenkamp and all these other people, Wes Craven and Robert, all play themselves, it's legitimately creepy.
Well, and we get to see Robert Englund act like a normal person in this, instead of being Freddy, which, I mean, he is, but we also get to see him act as himself and act with other actors, not as Freddy. And if you follow Robert Englund's career and you watch him in other movies, he's very much a character actor, but this one, I think you really kind of get to see him kind of flex, his acting muscle and show us, I'm actually a good actor. I was about to be Luke Skywalker.
Well, I'm happy he didn't get that so he could be Freddy, but
yeah, well, me too. But still, I mean, like, the fact remains, like, we get to see Robert Englund act in a role that's not Freddy in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So it's interesting.
I think it's funny that my favorite moments of this movie are not the Freddy or the being that it was, Freddy captured as a character that was let loose. Like, my favorite moments are like when Heather Langenkamp's sitting down with Wes Craven and he's explaining and how he's writing this new movie and how he needs her to be Nancy again, and like the scene with her dad, John Saxon, where she finds herself in those same pajamas and she just has to go along. And even like the stuff like, oh, you let your kids watch those movies? Did you let them watch? Like the hyper judgmental hospital workers that exist in this movie. like would ask that question, but like all those things sort of adjacent to the more in your face horror elements of this movie are the things I enjoy about it, because it's like exploring this idea of these people made this series, and they made and Wes Craven in particular made it to do this, and now we need these characters to play, we need these actors to play themselves, playing the characters they played in the series. Like, it's just a lot of fun conceptually, and the pacing is a little slow. There aren't many deaths. There was two. There's the guy's crotch at the beginning, her husband, and the babysitter who's killed exactly like Tina. Like, I don't know if anybody else dies in the whole movie, but it's like, kind of despite all that, like, I just really enjoy the hell out of it. I think it's a really just interesting concept to take to revisit the series with, like he did.
I agree. So we'll drop it at A.
Yeah, like A.
We really need somebody in here to argue with us.
Right.
Hopefully it'll happen in the comments. Anyway.
Wow, it's YouTube. It'll happen.
Yeah. All right, Freddy vs. Jason. What I would argue is the Jason movie in the Freddy series.
That was it. Jason kills like 89 people. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but basically 89 people. Freddy kills one.
Yeah.
One person.
And it was like kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And like, the way they treated Jason in this movie was also kind of dumb. Being a Jason director. Well, I guess what I should say, maybe not the way Jason was treated, but like inventing his fear of water.
Oh, well, no, hold on. We'll get to that. That's part of a larger problem.
Right.
I thought you were talking about like in terms of the portrayal of Jason. I was a really big fan of this, and I know that's not a popular opinion in Friday the 13th circles. They're like, "Oh, it's Frankenstein Jason." I'm like, I like the way that they shot him in this. I liked it better than Kane Hodder.
Oh, get out of here!
It's true. Kane Hodder wasn't in a single good Friday the 13th movie. Give me a break.
Wasn't he in Jason X?
I said it wasn't. It's not good. I enjoy it, but it's not good.
I almost got you.
No, I know it's a bad movie. I just like it. Nice try.
Well, but, so would you put? So where would you? I would honestly like. Before we get to our complaints, I still enjoy this movie.
Oh yeah.
So I'm waffling.
It's B.
I don't think I'd put it in C. I think I would put it in B.
I agree that it's B, and here's why I think it's a B tier. And I think again, it does lean way heavier into Friday the 13th than Nightmare on Elm Street. But Freddy's in it, so we're using it in this tier list. Robert Englund's great in it. There are a number of really good kills. Most of them, pretty much all of them. Yeah, all of the good kills were done by Jason. But this movie delivers on its premise. The movie's called Freddy vs. Jason, which is, again, the most direct, but maybe not the best title. But it tells you right on the tin, this is what this is. And when it gets to that part, when Freddy is versing Jason, it's awesome. It's exact. I mean, this is the first of either series that I could see in the theater. Because I didn't see Jason X. Actually, Jason X was after this, wasn't it? No, that was like 2001, 2002. So I guess I technically could have seen Jason X, but I didn't see it. But the last Nightmare on Elm Street movie in the theater was New Nightmare, and that was 94. I wasn't going to go see this at 6. Right. So I was super psyched to see this, and then having the actual actually deliver on the fight, and it kind of being kind of fun getting there with discount Jason Mewes and some of these other characters that aren't the best but still kind of fun to watch. Like it's a not good movie that I think delivers on what it's supposed to deliver on, and I have a lot of fun with it, which is why, again, like kind of my argument with 4 is like there are things I really like about it, and there are things that really are terrible, and that's why it's a solid B. But I think it delivers on what it's promising.
I think so too. I just like you said, it's a Jason movie. I was really hoping that they were gonna have the cognitive capacity to give a 50-50 to the two biggest horror icons. I mean, obviously
They're
Michael.
two of the
Two
biggest.
of okay, all right. So two of the biggest horror icons, you would expect them to, give equal time or equal, I guess, effort in who gets to do what. Because you have plenty of the story is that Freddy wants to use Jason to have kids start to fear Freddy again to bring him, get some power. And so then he gets all, mad that he's getting all the credit. And so now Freddy actually has to do something. And then they just don't ever do that. They make him go after Jason. And it's like, it's just the way that they set that. I guess the way that they set that up for me is like, I thought it was a good setup. And then just as we're going through the movie, you're like, well, Freddy's not really doing anything. And then we get to the fight, which is awesome. But what I brought up earlier that we're going to talk about is this whole Jason is afraid of water now kind of thing.
Well, yeah, they have that really, really stupid line that's part of a dream sequence, I believe, with the main character. And she's like, Jason was killed by water, Freddy by fire. How can we use that? And I'm like, you don't. Like, right. Jason's been in a lake for half the movies. Like, you don't use it. Like, and it makes me wonder, this movie was in development hell for like a long time. It was hinted at the end of Jason Goes to Hell in the 90s. So, and this came out like more than 10 years later, I believe. So this was the best script. That's my thing is like you have a script with those lines and that sort of that logic and Freddy making the waterfall in front of Jason. He's like, oh, I'm afraid of what? Like who wrote this? Like there were like a dozen scripts that people wanted to write Freddy versus Jason. You pick the script from the people who like didn't know that Jason was in a lake for half the movies.
Yeah. Like
how does that even happen? So like that's the most mind-boggling thing. Like, the writing in this is not. It's not good, and I think that like Robert Englund, you talked about like the 50-50 of like Jason kind of taking over the movie. He does get more of the kills, but I do think Robert Englund does the best with the material he's given. That even the lines that he's spouting, given them by the same people who wrote those lines about water and being afraid of fire and all that stuff, he's still making them work because he's so good at making them work. So it's like I don't even notice the script when he's talking, but when everyone else
when everybody else is talking.
So it's one of those things like I love popping this in on a whim and checking it out and being irritated at all the kind of stupid like nonsensical ideas running around in it. But it's also totally delivers on really great Jason. I mean, for Friday the 13th series, the bed fold in half kill is like that's a top kill in that series.
Jason gets a bunch of great stuff in this movie, but unfortunately, it like that it where it helps, it also hurts it. All of this cool stuff Jason could have done. You also could have done a bunch of cool stuff with Freddy, and that would have made your movie better. But the fact that it leans so heavily onto Jason doing everything, it takes away from it.
It leans on him doing kills, which again I agree. I don't disagree with you when you say like you wanted more Freddy kills. Like us watching it, I'm always astounded that Freddy kills one person the entire movie. It's mind-boggling. But since Jason's like a non-speaking character, Freddy is given all of the sort of dialogue, all the sort of interactions with the characters that aren't just getting cut in half. Freddy gets to do all that. And he still kind of gets to be the big bad of the movie. Like Jason's terrible, but he's just sort of a big dumb dog that can't stop eating, like the writers put in that movie so eloquently. So like Freddy's still like the big bad guy. So like he's given credit in that regard.
I don't know. I every time I watch it, I am underwhelmed with Freddy's presence. Despite everything else, and then also the ending is stupid. Like it's just dumb. What a dumb way to end that movie.
Well, I mean, I don't think you could have killed either one. I think they I believe the idea was that they shot multiple endings where one like Freddy came out of the water or something, or I don't know, and they went with that to show like neither one really won, although Jason totally kind of won. I mean, you're carrying somebody's severed head, and someone's not carrying your severed head. You probably won.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The ending didn't make me like super upset, I guess, but I can understand not liking it.
So that's why I put it at a B. I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah, like I
we
said,
could
solid
watch
B.
it, but yeah, it's just a very average movie.
And I honestly think that I'm probably rating it higher. I think no, the fight's that good. It's a B. Never mind.
I think it's a very average movie. I mean, honestly, it's a very 5 out of 10. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like a very average movie. So
that has happened to really like.
Yeah, that we enjoy. So no harm, no foul. Okay. How do we okay. I'm trying to think as I hide this bullshit.
I was like, oh no, it's not filming. We have to do it again. Yeah, you can leave it there. You don't have to touch it.
I think it belongs here. I think an argument can be made for C. And here's what I'll do. Here, I'll make the argument. I'll make the argument, and you can tear it apart. That's fine, but I will make the argument. Who's the actor that played Freddy?
Jackie Earle Haley.
Thank you, Jackie Earle Haley. I'm already ruining my own argument. I thought he did a very good job as Freddy. I thought with the script that he was given, I thought he did a good job. I know that the intent of this film was to make a darker, grittier, unfunny, child molesting Freddy. I'd stop. But because that's what they wanted to do, they wanted to have a Freddy that was more like Freddy in the second Nightmare. I thought that was well done.
Sorry, my dog's off screen getting in the garbage. Ripley!
Do you need to go get her?
Sorry. Please continue. No, please continue.
So I thought he did a good job as Freddy, being the only guy to play Freddy after Robert Englund and having to do that. I thought he did a good job. I thought that the movie was. I thought the cinematography was good. That's why I don't think.
I'm giving you your time, man. I'm just letting you go.
I'm trying.
Jackie Earle Haley, good. The cinematography was okay. All right. So far, so good.
I'm trying. But that's why I think somebody could make the argument that this belongs in C other than D with Freddy's Dead. I think Freddy's Dead is just so spectacularly bad in every way that the way that Nightmare 2010 comes across, it definitely, like, the people that shot it knew what they were doing when they shot it. It's just the writer didn't know what they were doing, or the writers didn't know what they were doing, and the director also didn't really know what they were doing. So, there. All right, go.
All right, you made some really good points. So, I saw this in the theater opening night, maybe with you,
yes.
Actually.
Yes.
That was the last time I watched it, and I remember it so vividly because I was so vividly disappointed. I was so mad the whole time that it's just burned into my psyche. Jackie Earle Haley, I agree. He did a great job. You're trying to fill some big shoes. There was nothing wrong with his performance. I actually even kind of like the weird makeup that they decided on, which is based off of like real burn victims, supposedly. I was fine with that. I'm okay with going a darker, not jokey Freddy. That's fine too. That's all great stuff. However, when it's kind of like how Rob Zombie's Halloween isn't a Halloween movie. It's a Friday the 13th movie, but worse. This isn't a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. The first death is that kid in that diner getting his throat slit by a knife. if I'm remembering correctly, which I feel like it's in there. Freddy uses a knife. That's the kill. You have the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie in 20 years, just about, like pure Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and you can't even have an interesting, creative, dreamscape-based death. You have a guy getting his throat slit in a diner with a knife, and I was just like, what? You have all this technology? You've had 20 years to develop people with new ideas in this playground, and this is what you start us off with, and it doesn't get any better from there. Like they spend, I mean, after showing you like Freddy, like I don't know, perpetually torturing the kids that he kills toward the beginning, like they're like hanging upside down or something. After they show you that, they're like, well, maybe he wasn't really this molester guy, and he was really innocent, and he's just trying to get his good old fashioned revenge, and he totally deserves it. And like nobody's buying it. It's like in Glass, the second worst movie I've seen in the theater in the past 10 years.
All right, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Glass.
There you go. 75% of the movie is them trying to convince you that the events of Unbreakable and Split didn't happen. Guess what? We're not going to bite. We know it did. Kind of like with this. Stop trying to tell us that Freddy was innocent. You're not going to do that. And if he was, and he is this justified revenge angel that you're trying to sell him to be for this weird investigation, he's not doing that fucked up shit to those kids. So right. Like, why do we even go down this? Like, you're not going to convince us. It's not happening. I'm sorry, it's not happening, movie. And I couldn't tell you what the other deaths in the movie were. I remember some kid being like up high, shirtless because he was a diver or something. I remember Katie Cassidy being like the character that we thought was the main character, and then her dying, like a quarter into the movie or a third of the way in the movie, and then it jumps over to Rooney Mara, who's like completely disinterested in being in the movie at all, and is not acting in the slightest. Like there's nothing there. She's just a gaping void. Like there's Jackie Earle Haley being a good Freddy and it looking visually, because it's directed by Samuel Bayer, who's a music video director. Which again, I'm into music video directors like jumping to features in the ideas like, oh, they're usually like incredibly imaginative, visually interesting directors. And I was like, that's a good fit. If somebody's gonna like, why not? I'll give it a shot. And he just, I don't know, it just didn't work. And those two things I mentioned, the complete lack of imagination in a series that's best movies are defined by its use of imagination, and this weird plot thread of trying to, like, maybe he's a good guy or something and the kids were bad. Okay, like, stop. And that just completely ruins any enjoyment. Like, it's not as consistently bad as 6 is, but it is insultingly bad. It insults your intelligence.
So we're going to move it down to D.
I feel like that's the right choice.
Yeah, man, this movie was not good.
Oh god. And I was like, and when a reboot or remake is that bad, not only have you wasted your time and you're mad because you like this franchise and they fumbled the ball, but you're watching, you're like, oh no, how much longer will it be until we get another attempt at this?
Yeah,
they ruined it. We could have gotten
they
gotten a series of, well, I think it's a fertile playground. Now, there's an argument like, well, Freddy's such an integral part of the series, obviously, and he was played by an actor who's, that was tied to that character and made it that partial, part of the success of Robert Englund being Freddy. I'm going to say it's also the shoestring budgets and the directors doing crazy shit with limited money and the practical stuff. I think it's part of it too. And that's the part of it that would be going on, is like finding creative directors, putting together practical, inventive, dreamscape-based kills. And that's kind of a world that's untapped in horror right now. Most of the time. Most of the time, if somebody taps into the dreamscape, it's some boring, pretentious bullshit. So, like, yeah, I kind of want some low hanging fruit nightmare movie, I guess, but that's back to basics. But I don't know when we'll get that, or if we'll get that, or if they'll solve the Freddy problem. Although, um, if you had to pick someone to be Freddy in a movie, who would you pick? This is unfair because I had this conversation with a mutual friend of ours, and I came up with an actor I'm very happy with, but I'm just bringing this on.
Yeah. Is it too obvious to say Joaquin Phoenix?
Maybe.
That's a little too obvious. You think I should think a little harder about that?
I mean, well, I mean, again, sprung on you. I don't think that's a bad option.
Because I'm trying to think of somebody who could do that maybe hasn't. Because Joaquin Phoenix plays a good bad guy.
Sure, you know? Sure.
And so I think he has that range and ability. I'm not sure how funny he is, because I do think part of Freddy's popularity is that he's like, you know, part of his charm is some of those one-liners that are pretty funny that he gives. And a lot of that has to do with writing, yeah, you know, but there's also timing on the actor.
Sure. The dark humor element of Freddy is there. Mine was Paul Dano.
Okay.
Because I think he's one more likely to do it. And after watching him in The Batman as Riddler, I thought he definitely has the range to do all sorts of crazy stuff. And he's just sort of a creepy guy. No offense. I don't mean like he's literally creepy, but he's really good at playing creepy characters. Like his performance as Riddler was great. Yeah. And I'm watching that, I'm like, he's young enough that he could do the role for a while. I think he's a really good actor and can be all over the place. And I think he's also kind of unconventional looking in a way that would make like Robert Englund sort of unconventional looking.
Yeah.
And I also think that he's different enough to be his own Freddy and not trying to capture the exact same look and the exact same feel as Englund, because you're just not going to do as good a job.
Yeah, I like that. I like that pick. I think Joaquin is getting up there in age too, and that might. I mean, like Freddy Krueger is in heavy makeup, so I don't think that really I don't think that's a huge factor. But yeah, I think it could play into it. I mean, God, Robert Englund was how old when he first played Freddy? I mean, he was in his 30s. You know.
Yeah, he had been in his 30s.
So yeah.
Well, I just watched 976 Evil, the first movie he directed, and I was kind of interested at the time because I think it came out in '89, I believe, and too much forehead. And I was like, oh, how old was he when he directed this? Like as his first movie, I think he was 43 in '89. So yeah, he was in his mid to late 30s when he first played Freddy, I think. I'm not great with math off the top of my head.
Yeah, me neither.
That seems about right.
I'd have to think about that. Okay, well, if anybody's watching this and they're thinking about writing a new Freddy or Nightmare on Elm Street movie, there you go. There's our suggestions for Freddy and what you should do and what you should not do, which is anything that Nightmare 2010 did. So definitely, I mean, like what not to do are just as good of lessons as what to do. So it's great to watch. If you're looking at our tier list, it's great to watch the C and D movies to go, probably shouldn't do these. Definitely the D ones. But anyway, what do you think of our tier list overall and how we did? And if this is something you think will be accepted by the community, as if their opinion matters. Like
ours does. Sure.
Right, ours does. We're the ones making the ranking. If you want to make your own ranking, put out your own video. I think it's a good list. I think I think based off of if we were recommending these to either a new horror fan or somebody that likes horror but hasn't been introduced to the series, I think this is a good ranking. And the reason I'm looking over here is because this is my bigger monitor over here, so I can see everything. But I think it's a good a good list. I think these will be agreed upon, other than other than the troglodytes in Reddit that would have something to say.
Listen, I'm sure there's probably a lot of shuffling outside of S tier. I'm sure there's a lot of shuffling done by people. I know people who hate it. Just there's no redeeming quality. They think it's as bad as 6. Like it's all over the place. So I think I think there's probably a general consensus on 1 and 3 being the best of this franchise, and there's probably an argument up and down a tier for all the rest except for. I think S and D are pretty set. I think the other 5 films could probably move up and down one, and I'd be like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on and doing this with me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for inviting me. It's fun. I might have been around when you watched the first Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time. I might have been there.
That was you. If you didn't know, I'll just tell you. You've shown me pretty much all of my initial horror films. I didn't really have anybody else to go to when suggesting movies, so yes, it was probably
come to my
you.
VHS library. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, folks, let us know in the comments what you thought about this. It'd be great if you want to help this channel out. Please at least like the video. It's very easy to just click that little button. Share it around. That also really helps the algorithm, makes our stuff get seen. And if you like hookah or horror or both, every Wednesday I host a show called Hookah and Horror, where I have guests on and we talk about horror movies and really pretty much anything that kind of comes up. It's more of a conversational, less of an interview type show, where we just kind of talk about things that we like and smoke hookah, and it's a good time. Episode 4, we're going to have Rick Danford on. So this movie's going to age only as well as that. But anyway, check out Hookah and Horror every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Jason, anything you want to say?
Just thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. And, maybe next year we'll do another one like this.
Next year, we're going through all horror franchises. We're doing Witchcraft next.
No, not Witchcraft.